In her historical novel of the Bronze Age, Warrior Scarlet, Rosemary Sutcliffe tells the story of Drem, a boy with a crippled arm, who, having failed in his manhood test to kill a wolf unaided, receives an other chance to be recognized as a warrior of his tribe. In this extract, Drem, who had searched the snow-covered hills for Dolly, the shepherd, finds him unconscious at the foot of a flint quarry. He sends his hound, Whitethroat, to the village for help. From somewhere ahead of him in the gray murk, it rose, long-drawn, savage, and unutterably sad, the cry of a wolf on the hunting trail. Another cry echoed it, nearer than the first, and then there was only the wind in the silence. Drem felt as though all the blood in his body had jumped back to his heart, and an icy stillness took him. The ewe stirred behind him, snorting and stamping her foot. He prayed that she might not bleat in terror, not that it would make much difference if she did, for the wolves were downwind of them and the gusts would carry their scent if indeed the brutes were not running on it already. Something brushed against his knee, and Ku was crouching beside him. He could feel the tremors running through the old dog's body, tremors of fear and fury and hate. He laid his hand for an instant on the dog's neck, and felt the harsh hairs rising against his palm. Nothing more happened for so long that he felt he could not bear the waiting for a heartbeat longer. He must yell, beat his spear against the chalk, anything to break the thin-drawn agony of waiting. But still he crouched silent, his heart beating with a slow, heavy drub that seemed to wait to listen between each beat, and the old shepherd's hound crouching against his knee. The ewe was snorting again, in pain and terror. She had gone off her feet, and Drem thought she needed help, but he could not help her, not now. The moon swam out suddenly, free of the scudding, curdled cloud, into a lake of clear sky, and in the sliding silver light, something moved on the smooth whiteness of the snow before the quarry mouth. Something dark, and running low, like a great hound. But it was no hound, and behind it came to more. Now that the moment had come, it was almost a relief, and as the wolves swerved in their tracks and headed in towards him, Drem began to yell and throw the lumps of chalk that he had gathered. That might frighten them back for a while, but not for long. If only he had some means of making a fire to singe their hides. The great gray leader flinched from the lump of chalk that caught him on the shoulder, and gave back a little. But they were famine-driven. Even in that fitful light, Drem could see how their bones stared through their hides. And seeing that there was none against them but one lone shepherd and a dog, they would not be long held from their attack by yelling and lumps of chalk. They slunk to and fro, dodging the clods he flung at them, and he saw their shining eyes in the moonlight, their lolling tongues, and the thick, raised hair of their manes. There was a kind of hideous mirth about them, as though they knew that there could be but one end to the thing, and could afford to laugh. Already the great gray leader was slinking forward again, his belly almost on the snowy ground, his jaws widening in that obscene grin. Drem had no idea how long he had held them off with his lumps of chalk. He had nothing to throw now, except Dolly's spear. He caught that up and flung it, but the broad fighting spear was not meant for throwing, and in the uncertain light it did no more than graze the leader's shoulder as it flew. He had nothing left to throw at all now, and the wolves knew it. This was the kill. Drem had caught up his own spear and half risen to his feet, crouching there, his eyes wide and fixed on the oncoming gray leader. His mouth was very dry. The old hound crouched snarling at his side, and behind him he was aware, though he did not know how, that the ewe had struggled to her feet again, bleeding in wild pain and terror. Nearer and nearer, circling warily, came the gray leader, squirming and slinking low-bellied over the snow. In the last moment it seemed to Drem that he had known this wolf before, and the wolf had known him. The wicked grin, the welcome and the savage yellow eye belonged to a before time as well as to now. But then it had been the wolf who waited for the meeting. Now it was Drem. Then the great beast gathered himself on his haunches and sprang. Drem leapt to meet him, while Ku flung himself with a snarl at the throat of the second wolf, the she-wolf. Even as they came together, there was a distant shout, a burst of shouting, but Drem did not hear it. In all his world there was only himself and his wolf, and old Dolly, and the ewe struggling to bring her lamb to birth behind him. And then not even Dolly and the ewe, only himself and his wolf. He had side-slipped as the wolf sprang forward, and his spear took the great brute behind the shoulder and was all but wrenched from his grasp as it turned, yowling, almost in mid-leap. Fiery pain slashed at his right shoulder just as it had done before, but he scarcely felt it as he drove his shortened spear home again. He was dragged to his knees, the wolf almost on top of him, tearing at his shoulder, striving to come at his throat. He drove his chin down onto his breast, and stabbed his spear dagger-wise again and again into its body as they rolled together in the snow. The third wolf was on him now. There was a terrible stricken howling. He did not know whether it was himself or his wolf that howled, a worrying, and a snarling and a yelling. There was the taste of blood in his mouth, and a darkness flaring into ragged lights before his eyes. And then the yelling was a different yelling, neither his own nor his wolf's. And the lights were the saffron maris tales of torches carried by running men, and it was all over. In some unbelievable way it was all over. He was crouching with hanging head in the churned and trampled snow, staring down at the red that blotched and spattered the whiteness. Scarlet on white, warrior scarlet, and for a moment he thought hazily that it was the scarlet on the white breast of the swan that had been his first kill. Then his brain cleared somewhat, and he saw that it was blood on snow, hot blood on cold snow, steaming a little in the flaring light of the torches. Old Ku and the she-wolf lay sprawled together, both with their last fight fought, and at a little distance, the third, a young one, snapped and snarled in its death agony, with somebody else's spear through it. But the torchlight fell fullest and fiercest on the body of the great grey leader lying outstretched almost against Drem's knee. There were men all around him, white a throat nuzzling into his face, trying to lick all at the same time the torn and streaming wounds in his right arm and breast and shoulder. Someone was supporting him, and he knew that it was Vortrix, and Vortrix's voice was in his ears, lit with a ringing triumph. He has killed his wolf. See, Luga, Urian, a fine wolf slaying there has been here. He has killed his wolf, and I think that his wolf has killed him, Urian said. But Drem only heard them vaguely and a long way off. Look to Dolly, he mumbled. The you too, she, it is well with the you. That time it was Hunno's voice. She needs no looking to, and suddenly he was aware of the thin crying of a newborn lamb, and a moment of swift exultancy leaped in him, not because he had slain the great grey leader, but of all unlikely reasons because a lamb had come unscathed into the world. It was the last thing he knew with any clearness for a long time.